Hello, friends, and welcome to Pathologic, Volume 1, Episode 4. In this episode, we're going to be looking at a puzzle type called Pentominous, which is exciting because this is our first chance to solve a polyomino-based puzzle together. We will, as usual, take a look at the rules together, and then we will have a chance to solve a puzzle. And without further ado, let's have a look at the rules. Pentominous is a region division puzzle in which we are going to be drawing pentominoes in a grid. The rules say, separate the grid into sets of 5 orthogonally connected cells called pentominoes. Orthogonally just means connected by an edge. So, for example, in the solution, you can see that these 5 cells are connected, and there is no 6th, nor is it 4. There's exactly 5 orthogonally connected cells. Pentominoes of the same type cannot share an edge orthogonally, but they can touch diagonally. What is a type of pentomino? Well, it is a particular shape which might be mirrored or reflected. The types are here at the bottom of the rules, and they're all labeled by letters that sort of correspond to the shape of that pentomino. Typically, when solving one of these puzzles, you will be given this cheat sheet, but it does become kind of second nature after a little while, which letter corresponds to which shape. Letter clues indicate which type of pentominoes the clue resides in. So from this P, we know this must be in a region like this one that is P-shaped, although that could be rotated like so, or even reflected so that it's actually a Q shape. This is not a puzzle where we need to mind our P's and Q's. Not all pentominoes are clued, and multiple letter clues may belong to the same pentomino. That is not shown in our example here, but it's just saying it would be legal for there to be another T clue right here. That doesn't mean they're necessarily in different shapes. They could have the same letter twice in a single shape. Those are the rules of Pentominous. So let's get solving. Today's Pentominous puzzle is set by Tyrgannus. And this is going to be a little trickier for me because I don't solve these nearly as much as some of the other types that we've featured. But what we need to be able to do is extend these clues to make the indicated shapes while leaving nothing out. So I am kind of scanning the grid for any places that look pretty constrained to me. I'm paying attention to this Y clue right here because that Y shape can't use this cell really in any position other than the one that happens to be marked as the example for how a Y is. Because let's think about it. What are the options? This Y could be just how it's laid out there, and I think that's likely. Is there any other place that it could be horizontally laid out? Well, normally you could invert that, but this I clue is telling us no, we can't. So if it's gonna be laid out horizontally, that is the way it is laid out, and obviously the little protrusion can't go down. Could this be the little protrusion? Well, no, because then we'd have this, if it were even the I aside, we couldn't do that because then we'd have an isolated cell here that couldn't be part of a pentomino. So if it's horizontally laid out, we know how it fits. What about if it's vertically? Again, it can't. If it were vertically, this given Y could not be the protrusion because then we'd have something escaping the bottom of the grid. So it would need to be this cell at this edge or this cell at this edge. Let's look at how those we laid out. One option would be this or this, both of which still have the problem of isolating this corner. The question is, could it be this? And I guess it could by that rule alone, because we now have enough room to squeeze in what would be an I pentomino right there. But I see a problem with that, because what happens to this I clue? It's gotta go east and make an I like that. And by doing that, the thing below it is going to have to be another I pentomino, which falls afoul of the rule that no two pentominoes of the same type can share an edge. So I imagine there's going to be an easier way to begin than that, but that was what jumped out at me, and I feel very confident in that logic. So we've ruled out all the possibilities for this Y except looking like this. Now, this particular interface allows you to solve either by drawing these lines or by drawing the borders. I'm going to be doing both throughout this solve, but I'm going to put in the borders when I'm sure of that border. Okay, so that was probably more difficult. I see another thing I can do down here, but as I was saying those words, I saw where we were probably supposed to start, and that was probably this Z in the corner. A Z shape can be an S or a Z, depending on how it is flipped, and either way, this in the corner here could only be one of these edge squares of the polyomino. Hopefully it is obvious why that's the case. So it is either going to go this way or it's going to go this way. Now, in some puzzles, I would indicate that by putting a Z here and a Z here, because those are forced regardless of the orientation. But we don't really have to do that, because you could see one of those two choices was busted already by this V being right there. So the Z clue does go like this, and we can be sure of that, and we can fill it out. Now, we don't know what shape this belongs to, but it starts here, and it's got to get 5 cells. And it's going to go down this way, and can't go any further, because then it would need to have the shape of a V. And a V only has 2 cells sticking out on each leg. So it's not going to go further, it's going to go east, and we're going to have a wall in between there. Now here's, we get to use the other rule again. Could this continue? Well, normally, yeah, that's fine. We'd have 5 cells, so we'd have a pentomino. But the problem is that would make a V shape, and we know this cell is in a different pentomino that is a V. And so they can't be adjacent. So this does not go east, it goes south. We have completed what ended up being an N pentomino right there. Okay, so this V is now defined. It's got to go down. And does it go right or left? Well, it can't go left, so it goes right. So we have completed that V. And this is now part of this T, but we don't really know whether it is an upside down T like this or an on its side T. Both of those seem to work at the moment, so we'll leave that alone. How about this V? There's not enough room for it to go vertically. It needs 3 cells on both of its sides. So it does not go vertically, so it must go horizontally for 3 cells. And then it's got to turn and have 2 more. There's not enough room up here, so it goes down, and it is complete, like so. Let's look here. This can go east, east, east. Could it keep going? No, because then we would have the wrong shape. It wouldn't be a P, it would be an I. So it's got to go south, and it is complete. Okay, how about this N? Well, this has to go down. What does an N look like? It's got a short leg and a long leg, basically. What if this were the short leg? Then this would have to turn and then go down, but there's not enough room for that. It would hit the T. So this is not the short leg, this is the long leg. Then it's got to turn and go down. Again, it can't go left, so it's going to have to go to the right. And then we have this T defined finally. It's got to be the upside down option. Great, making a lot of progress now. Let's look back in this corner over here, this I, which I had seen before, but then got distracted by seeing where we were supposed to start, I believe, up here. This I, again, it's got borders on two sides, so it's got to be one of the two ends of the I, and obviously it is not vertical. So it must lay horizontally like this. Great. And now that gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cells finishing up this L shape. This F must go into that cul-de-sac. Does that give us enough information to finish up what an F looks like? Well, let's look at this shape. I believe it does. Normally, an F going into a corner like this little cul-de-sac end could be one of 3 options on the F shape. If it were this bottom protrusion, then this cell would need to extend the shape in both directions, which is not possible right now. So that's not the edge. What about this one? Then it would come over here and it would turn and go 2 spaces down or 2 spaces up, both of which are impossible. So that's not the dead end. So it's got to be this one. It's got to go right, which is left down here, where I've got to mirror that shape. And the orientation is also defined by the fact that this wall is here. So we have finished this F. Great. Now we've got another edge down here that is pretty constrained. This is another case where it can't keep going because then it would be another I, but also because it would be an I, not a Z, but it would also be an I adjacent to an I. So for 2 reasons, it's got to turn and make an L. We got another Z. It's kind of like this one up in the corner, but it wasn't at the corner before, so we couldn't do quite as much fancy logic, but now it does have a corner. So how can that Z be laid out? The only way that I see of that working is it's got to get out of this little, here's a nice way of seeing this. It's got to get out of this 2x2 region at the bottom, because there are at least 5 cells in any pentomino, and it can't run into this L because that's a different letter. So it's got to get out here. So all 3 of these have to be part of that shape, and this has got to be a wall. And we know that regardless of what that letter was. We weren't even using the fact that it's a Z yet. But now that we know it's a Z, there's only one place in the Z that has 3 cells in a row. It's this, what is down here, a horizontal row. So that's like that. And now we can finish up the Z shape like so. Now this N is completely constrained. It's going to go like so. This L can only go like that. And we're down to 3/4 of the puzzle being done. Let's look at this W. W is a funky shape. I call it the Wario mustache. And it can, I can see that it could fit like this, but then there would be a problem with a hole right here. And it could normally do this, but it would run into the U. It's got to end up going in the negative diagonal instead. And the only place that has enough room is this shape right here. Now, what does that tell us about this x? I think not quite enough. It tells us that either we're making this x shape, like so, or we are making this x shape, which also seems okay. So I don't know that that alone has told us enough, other than that this is part of the x, regardless of which direction, and does end the shape. So knowing that, what could this u do? It could, if the x went to the right, it would be forced. And that makes me think that that is probably the truth. But I don't think we have the information to make that call quite yet. Because it could also, the x could be up here and the u could go this way. All right, so that doesn't give us enough. What about these p's? All right, so I think the question here is, could these be two different shapes? In order for that to be true, we'd need them to be separated by a third shape. That shape would need to come down here, and it would need to go, well, it couldn't go this direction because it'd cut off that p, but in fact, this p is already can't make the right shape because there's just not enough room anymore. So just by the fact that we had to separate those, that tells me these are not different shapes. They are the same shape. And in a P, the only way we can do that is by those three being this long leg of the P, which means the other two come down and either right or left. Okay, so now we have another shape that comes down from this side. And again, where can we go from here? Let's say the P went this way. Now what happens down here? The X, I believe, is causing a problem because the X can no longer go up. It's got to go to the right. And this P, were it to continue down, would give us only one cell left, and that's broken. So that is a counterexample for the P fitting that direction. In fact, it has to fit this direction, and it is done. We've got another shape coming down here. Either it's the X, or it needs to get out around the X, 1, 2, 3, at least that far, which strands this X. So in fact, that does have to be the X, and I was wrong in my guess that the X went to the right. Okay, so this shape comes down this way, and now we need to determine what this U does. So let's look at the shape of a U. It is a 2x3 with a hole cut in it. So let's just look at the 2x3 part. Either it is these bottom 6 with a hole cut in it, or it is this shape with a hole cut in it, but that will bump into what we've already drawn up here. So it's got to be the one at the bottom, and the hole can't be where the letter U already is, so it's got to go this way, and we have solved the puzzle. And that is how one might solve a Pentominoes puzzle. Thanks for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and check out the description below for more free puzzles.